Eggs are a really good topic because they're used so widely in the kitchen. Now there's three main components of an egg. First is the shell. The shell is made from calcium carbonate, and a very common misconception is that the color of the shell determines the flavor of the egg, when in fact the color of the shell, whether it's white or brown, just tells you the breed of the hen. There's also an air gap located within the egg, and that separates the inner membrane from the shell. And as a general rule, the larger the air gap, the older the egg. The second part of the egg is the yolk, which represents about 33% of the total egg, and it also contains 75% of total calories. So if one egg is 70 calories, the yolk represents just over 50 calories. It also contains lecithin in the yolk, which we use to emulsify ingredients, so if we're making a mayonnaise or a hollandaise perhaps. And it also coagulates at 149 to 158 degrees. The final component is the white, which we also refer to as the albumin, and this is where most of the protein comes from within an egg. There is also one final component known as the chalice, and the chalice acts kind of as the anchor from the egg yolk to the inner membrane of the egg. Eggs can come in virtually any different size. We see eggs as small as just over an ounce, known as peewee, to about 2.5 ounces each, which is a jumbo egg. In most recipes, standardized, we use large eggs. That's the most average size at about 2 ounces each. And grading goes from AA to A to B. AA and A are mainly sold to the public and to restaurants, while B is used a lot in our processed foods. Storage for eggs is very important. They must be kept below 40 degrees, and that eliminates the risk of going into the temperature danger zone, which is 41 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. They also need to be in a little bit higher humidity than most other foods, about 70 to 80%, and they should be stored away from foods that have a strong odor to them, so cheeses, aromatics, anything that's going to filter through that eggshell and taint the flavor of the egg. Dairy products derive their name based on the percentage of butterfat that they contain. So imagine that this red marker represents the butterfat. The dairy product with the lowest percentage of butterfat is in fact skim milk, which contains 0.5% of butterfat, while the dairy product with the highest percentage of fat is clotted cream, and that has a minimum of 60% butterfat. Now there's three forms of concentrated milk. The first is evaporated milk, and it is merely what it sounds. It's had a large percentage of water removed from it, and after the evaporation process it contains just over 7% milk fat. There are skim options available for those who would like a lighter evaporated milk. The second is sweetened condensed milk, and the very important thing to remember about sweetened condensed milk is that it essentially is the exact same thing as evaporated milk. It's had the exact same amount of water removed from it. The only difference is the amount of sugar that's been added to it. There's 40 to 45% sugar in that can of sweetened condensed milk. The third form of concentrated milk, like I said, was powdered milk, and that's used a lot in baked goods because the milk solids in the powdered milk promote browning when baking. We also have cultured dairy products, which contain a natural form of bacteria which is good for your digestive tract. And cultured dairy products are things such as yogurt, buttermilk, creme fraiche, sour cream. And creme fraiche is sort of a more mild version of sour cream. It reminds me of kind of like the hybrid between cream cheese and sour cream, and it's used very traditionally in French cuisine. Probably the most popular dairy product is butter, which must contain at least 80% milk fat. They are also graded similar to eggs on the AA, A, and B system, and this time they're ranked based on their flavor, body, color, packaging, and salt content. And what I find so ironic about butter is that only 2 to 4% of its entire mass is milk solids, but yet they burn so easily. Ice cream, like many other things we have in the kitchen, has many different forms that it can come in. One of the main terms for ice cream is French style, which is a custard base and it always contains eggs, while a Philadelphia style ice cream has no eggs. And a common term, I guess, for commercial manufacturing is overrun, which is when there has been air forced into the ice cream base, and it's widely used in a commercial setting because it increases their yield and it reduces their product cost because it's simply air. Now, like we talked about earlier, the butterfat content also determines the name of an ice cream product. So if it has 0% butterfat, that's known as a sorbet. If it's 1%, that is sherbet. And the key difference between ice milk and ice cream again is the butterfat content. So if it has less than 18% of butterfat, that is known as an ice milk. 18% or more is then known as an ice cream. Fats and oils are a staple in any kitchen, and the main difference between a fat and an oil is their state at room temperature. Oils are always a liquid at room temperature, while fats are always solid. Now, for every 1 gram of fat or oil, there's 9 calories. And despite what people may think or read online, there's no such thing as a low-fat fat. There's 4 important purchase considerations for fats and oils. The first is the smoke point. Are you going to buy something with a high smoke point, such as canola, or are you going to buy something with an extremely low smoke point, such as extra virgin olive oil? The second is the dominant flavor. If you're looking for something with a stronger flavor, maybe you'll go with sesame oil. If you want something very neutral, safflower oil would probably be the way to go versus any other thing. The third consideration is cost, of course. You want to keep your food costs low. And the last consideration is your purchase form. So are you going to buy the small 1-pound block of butter, or are you going to buy the 35-pound block or cube of Crisco if you're in a bakery? So those are all very important considerations when choosing your fats and oils. There are many different types of fats, the first being saturated. Now, any animal fat or tropical oil is bound to have saturated fat in it, and this is kind of the fat to stay away from. It increases your LDLs, and LDL stands for low density lipoprotein, and in layman's terms, it's just the bad cholesterol in your body. So that's really the one to stay away from if you're trying to decrease cholesterol. The second type of fat is monounsaturated. That is a plant-based oil, and that is a little more strongly flavored than polyunsaturated. So it has a more robust flavor compared to other fats. So common examples for that are olive or nut oils. And monounsaturated actually helps to lower your LDLs, so that can help with cholesterol levels as well. Polyunsaturated is also plant-based, and that's more neutral flavored oils, however, so something such as corn or safflower would be a polyunsaturated because they're very neutral. And a common term for fats and oils is hydrogenated, and if you break down the word hydrogenated, you'll see the word hydrogen. And the process of hydrogenation is when you take an unsaturated fat and you have hydrogen artificially forced into it to create an oil that is now partially or fully solid. So that is hydrogenation. The last term is rancidity, and an oil can become rancid if it's exposed to oxygen for too long, and basically a chemical change will occur within that oil to cause it to go rancid. Olive oil is probably my favorite oil to cook with just because of its broad range of uses. Now, on an olive tree, the fruit is known as a drupe, and the drupe is made up of 3 components: the peel, the pulp, and the stone. Most of the oil comes from the pulp, about 96 to 98% comes from the pulp, and it's very high in monounsaturated fats, so that's the good fat that we talked about earlier. And there's very strict regulations on its terminology, and its quality is based on the oleic acid content. Extra virgin olive oil, by law, must have less than 1% of oleic acid. Now, unrefined olive oil has retained oleic acid. The refined olive oil is where it's been stripped away from the oil. So, in terms of what they can label and title certain olive oils, extra virgin has been pressed only once, and virgin olive oils may be pressed 2 or 3 times. Their flavors can range anywhere from fruity to spicy, and colors can be deep green to gold to pale green. And contrary to what a lot of people may think, Italy is actually not the top producer by quantity of olive oil. It's Spain, actually. So, in order of the top three by quantity of producing olive oil is Spain, Italy, and Greece. And this concludes my short lecture on eggs, dairy, fats, and oils.